That original one, that 5.7, that's 8 years old, that's been in 4 movies. It's 8 years old. I've seen him absolutely flog the shit out of that thing, no harder than you could. And he hasn't broke it, he hasn't creased it, hasn't done anything to it after 8 years. So it's got to tell you something. It's like, hello, how long is this test going to go for?
Welcome to the Water People Podcast, where we talk story with some of the most adept and interesting water people on the planet. I'm your host, Lauren Hill, joined by my partner, Dave Rastovich. For us, this is a place to exchange not just ideas and practices, but stories, experiential knowledge gleaned from the aquatic adventures that shape us. We acknowledge the Bundjalung Nation, the traditional custodians of the land and waters where we work and play, who have cared for this sea country for tens of thousands of years. Respect and gratitude to all First Nations people, including elders past, present, and emerging. Let's raise a glass to something bigger than just great beer. Meet Stone and Wood, a brewery that thinks big and acts small. Today, we're in conversation with the Flax master himself, Shaper Gary McNeill. Gazza, as we call him, absolutely fizzes about all things board design. Gazza's an accomplished competitive surfer in his own right and has worked as production manager or ghost shaper for some of surfing's most well-known brands. He and Dave have collaborated on left-of-center high-performance surfboards under the Gary McNeill Concepts label for more than a decade. Friend of the podcast, Nathan Oldfield, wrote this of Gazza, quote, "At first glance, you'll see in Gary the familiar exterior of a likable Aussie blokeness, forged by a childhood spent in a working-class family in one of the most working-class of towns. He grew up in the no-nonsense, hard-working coal mining and industrial town of Wollongong on the south coast of New South Wales. But get to know him a little better, and you'll discover that he is a deep thinker and a spiritual man whose heritage includes Navajo roots." Gary said that as a result of growing up in such humble surroundings, he, quote, has a full appreciation of the value of the dollar. And in creating his concept boards, he's always strived to produce high-performance boards using materials that provide both strength and longevity. He said, quote, "I want customers to have a board that they can build a quiver around, that last, and that they know they can surf in the conditions that best suit themselves and their board. Importantly," he says, "boards that last reduce environmental impacts." Gazza dropped off a few fresh experiments, and we managed to get him to sit down for a whole hour to share more about his story and the nitty-gritty of experimental surfboard design and materials, including the flax cloth that you may have been hearing about from Stab's series, The Electric Surfboard Acid Test, which is now live to watch on stabmag.com. Definitely want to get right into the nitty-gritty with Flax, but we always start the podcast in the same way. And so I want to throw that question to you.
Yep.
Can you tell us about a time or experience after which you were never the same?
I've had two, but do you want both of them, the surfing one or the shaping one?
Whatever comes to you. Give us both.
I've got two. So the first one was the surfing one. I was 10 years old. I caught a little whitewash that reformed and turned into this green wall. I was one of those midget Farrelly, remember those things they were...
Oh, the foamy style.
The foamy.
Things?
I had a foamy, but it was like Bradder stuff that used to rash the hell out of your stomach.
Yeah.
I had one of them, and I stood on this thing, and I just went across this green wall, and I was never the same. I'm like, blew my mind. I was 10. You know, when you're that age, you're like... 10. It was the best experience ever. Because the year before, me and my brother were on those Greeno surf mats, you know. So we spent a year on them, and I'm like, but I'm going to stand up. And
was it the speed, the trim, the sound? What was it?
A green glassy wall, the sun was out, I was going, does it get any better than this?
Yeah.
That was that time, that point in time where your life's never going to be the same again, and it never has. I've been going since I'm 10, so now, that's 51 years in the ocean, the long haul.
You've got a lot to share.
I love it. It's just a couple seconds in time, but they were so powerful, you never forgot them.
No, never. And then the second one was the shaping one.
Yeah.
So that was a real changing point for my career as far as the shaper goes, because I qualified for the Queensland team, even though it was when the airline strike was on. Remember, an Ansett went down. So
what year is this?
This is 92.
Okay.
So everything was bad. It was 91 actually when it started, but 92 was I moved back to Wollongong because there was no work. It all went broke. So my grandmother said I could live in that house. So I lived there. But I was living in Wollongong, but I was on the Queensland team. I qualified the year before. So it's at Bells. And I had a pact with Rabbit. And it was funny. We were sitting on the hill at D-Bar and we're chatting away because that guy was a nemesis for me in the senior men's. He was such a good surfer, such a thinker, you know. He'd won the heat before he'd even paddled out, that guy. He was really good. And we made this pact that they were going to have the world titles in France and they were going to take the 1-2 out of the Aussie titles to the world titles for the Australian team. So me and him made this pact that we're going to be 1-2. We get to Bells, we get all the way through, we finish 1-2. I beat him in the final. We're going to the world title. But I had this full dilemma because I had this board bag there and I had a Burn, because I was sponsored by Burn at the time because I had no money. So they were giving me boards, Tommy's old throwbacks, so they were light and they're good. But I'd been shaping too. So I had a real early one that I'd shaped in my grandfather's shed. In the end, I went, screw it, I'm taking that. And I rode that in the final and won the Australian title on that board that I'd shaped, hand-shaped in the shed.
Wow.
So that was a changing moment for me because then it gave me confidence to go, well, shit, I can do this.
Yeah.
You know, so it changed my trajectory as far as I reckon I could make a living out of this one day, maybe.
Wow, that's so cool. I didn't know that specifically. I knew about that Aussie title, but I didn't know that you'd made that board and that was such a confidence-boosting turning point.
4-channel squash tail, mate. That good?
That's so good.
I wish I still had it. I really do. I wish I still had it.
How many boards had you shaped before that one?
Oh, probably about, I don't know, maybe 100. Maybe.
Wow.
It's pretty rough. Yeah, I wasn't a very good shaper by any means.
100 is a lot, though.
That's a lot of boards.
Not really. I mean...
For the layperson, it is.
You talk to any guy, mainstream, really, really good mainstream shaper, they say, you don't even know what you're doing till you've done 1,000. And when you've done 10,000, you're really good. Really good. Like, you know, I watched this clip about Ben Iper and he knew exactly to the millimetre after he'd hand planed a board where that straight edge would sit and where those measurements would be, and he was on the money every time. That's knowledge and just knowing. No, he was a pretty smart guy. Yes.
Sick. That's so cool.
It was a different time when you grew up. The culture was much more maybe encouraging of making your own craft, would you say?
Well, it was the 70s, right? So I'm surfing in the 70s, the original twin fins. It wasn't all peace and love, especially on the east coast of Australia. There was a lot of violence.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, a lot of stuff going on. Heroin was really bad. Like, it took down all that whole hierarchy above me. It just took them out. They were gone. Within 2 years, my career, we were ruling the beach because these guys were all dead, in jail, or disappeared.
And that on the south coast.
In Wollongong, yeah. And Cronulla was the same. They were going through the same thing as us. It was like, it just hit them hard. And I'm pretty sure the Goldie
too, yeah, totally.
Yeah, you would have seen it when you were young.
Yeah, Bugs speaks about that. He says, like, the Grim Reaper, he'd be up on the hill at D-Bar waving surfers in when he got his stash, essentially the dealer. And then surfers would come in and then you wouldn't see him again. There
was guys above us that used to heavy us a lot, and then they're just gone. They just disappeared.
How did you avoid that scene?
I was outsmarted them. I stayed away from all that shit.
Yeah.
All the guys I hung with, they were all dope smokers. They just want to get stoned and go surf and be gentle and just hang out. They didn't want to get into that. That stuff ends up violent one way or the other. Down the end, it always ends up in violence. And I watched them guys before me fading away. I watched them eat their body and they changed their personality. It just changed a lot of things with these guys. So it was pretty heavy.
Yeah, totally.
It was a learning curve. It happened all in front of me, so I was like, I took it in. And I've never touched anything. I've watched the surf industry, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the surf industry, but it's not for me. Yeah. It's not my road to go down.
Well, I would say you would be quite the force with the amount of energy you have anyway, and then you added some chemical concoction to it, you would just be so deadly. Because you just, how many coffees did you have this morning?
One.
Oh yeah, well, so to me it seemed, when you came in this morning with all these epic ideas about all kinds of things, I was just like, look at Gazza, just voltage, as Hilton would say.
Oh, yeah.
Just so much energy. And have you always been that way? Like, if you spoke to your parents, were they pulling their hair out because you were a little rat bag?
I was a total rat bag. I was a grommet. I was that grommet. You know that real annoying grommet that's trying to drag their mates out in the surf all the time? I had already come in, eaten something. I'm ready to go out again. And I'm trying to drag someone out with me because then I'm like, get away from me.
Yeah.
I was that guy.
Oh, that's great.
I was such a pain in the ass.
Okay, so how do we get from you winning the contest on your hand shape to then pursuing shaping as a livelihood? What's the gap there?
Well, I got offered Wollongong ran out for us. We got offered, we had no money, and our daughter was just born. She was only 2 years old or something. And Chris's auntie offered us to come back because her family were up here. So she paid for the removalist to come back. And so we moved back. That's how we did it.
To Kira, basically.
Back to Kira. Yeah. And then I got a job I went everywhere looking for a job. And it only took me a week. I got a job in 1 week, I was just going hard, going in asking. And I got a job with Nev. And so Nev gave me a start. I was his box boy, 18 countries, 200 boards a week. So he was next level. And then what happened was Damien Davis, who was the production manager, he went snowboarding in Japan, slipped over and cracked his head. He was out. And so they just come to me and went, "You're it." And I'm like, oh shit, I was just totally shitting myself because it was easy when you're just spraying blanks white and packing boards. You don't have to think about anything. And I didn't know what to do. And I went, okay. And so the office chick, she just went, "Come and do this." And I pulled out the drawers and I looked through the files and I just went right back to, and I saw all the back and forth and I realised how it worked. So I had to think about it and I had to study it, and then I studied it, and then I just became the production manager.
How old were you at that point?
28, 29, something, 28 maybe, yeah.
That's a big role to step into.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of expectation, a lot of room for error.
Oh, heaps of error. I mean, yeah, heaps of error.
That's mid-90s, eh?
Yeah, this is early 90s.
Yeah,
early 90s.
Yeah.
Like, I was at Nev at like 93.
And so Nev, for people who are listening, Nev Hyman, he was at that time one of the sort of more popular shapers in the world. He had Munga Barry and Sonny Garcia was riding a bunch of his boards even.
Even your roughhead was in there.
Yeah, I was in there. Willsey was riding his boards, going for world titles. He had like a really solid deal going on. His boards, he'd do a run to Japan every year. He had a huge shop on the Gold Coast Highway. He built that enormous board that's stuck on the roof of the whole thing.
I was towing it. I was in the boat, driving the boat when we towed that into a wave. And there was like 40 people on the thing.
That's right.
It was nuts.
So he was going big. So for you to be thrust into that position, you were probably thrown into a deeper deep end than most people in the surfing world at that time, because he was really going hard. He was making a lot of boards.
Crazy.
Can you remember what the numbers were at that point? Like what you were having to deal with?
200 to 250 boards a week.
Oh my word.
18 countries. The Japanese guys used to come in, they'd sell everything we were making for them. They would fly over, they would come in, they'd go into the shop, and the shop had hundreds of boards in it, and they would clean out the shop.
Wow.
They could not get enough of his boards at that point in time. It was crazy. Crazy.
It's such an amazing lineage in the surfboard world where there's all these peaks and troughs, but like you talk about Greg Knoll back in the 60s in that period, and the numbers they were moving in California were more than that.
Oh yeah, it would have been crazy.
They're Malibus and anyway, all these like boom and bust periods, and I feel like that moment there, that little period where Nev was really going like that, it was a real boom period because the surf industry as a whole was booming.
That was the pinnacle of the start of that major climb for the surf industry from the early 90s to the 2000s or whatever. I remember Billabong, they couldn't make enough clothes. They could, and they were telling the dealers what to get, because it's just this they knew what was going to sell. Yeah. It was crazy.
So how did that feel for you, like going in? Was that a fun time while you were managing all that stuff? Were you also shaping on the side still? Yeah. What was your general story at that point?
So what would happen, because I had no money again, and I had a wife and 2 kids at home by then, I'd work from 9 till 5. I'd surf early in the morning before work, so I'd be surfing Burley Point at 7:30 every day for years. And I'd surf, go to work at 9 and work till 5. Everyone would go home. I'd go upstairs. And I remember I walked in a room, Nev showed me out the back where he had his own pantograph machine back then before the early ones. You had to actually be a shaper to finish him. He said, go for it, because the guy that used to cut him was a bit of a stoner. So these things would be one rail like this, one rail like this. They were all over the place. And the ghost shapers didn't want to know about them because there was so much work. So I could have them for free. So I was getting free blanks, but I had to work on them. So it made me a better shaper because I had to learn how to finish these things, and they were pretty bad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're starting with asymmetrical blanks.
Pretty much.
That's a huge curveball.
Yeah, and asymmetrical rails.
Yeah.
Completely.
Wow. Yep.
One low, one high.
Yeah. So I remember seeing your head in there, because at that time
Did you guys run into each other in the surf? Surfing Burley?
More just there, I reckon, at the shop.
There. Yeah.
Because I'd come in and I'd be lucky. Like I was a grommet then. I was like 15, 14, 15, 16.
Yeah.
17, I think, was about the period that I was riding Nev's boards. And so I was lucky enough to come in through the year and get half a dozen boards a year, maybe, something like that.
What was your impression of young David here?
Oh, he's another from Burleigh that's on his way. There was a few, and Nev had a big stable of people at the time. Like, you know, he was doing boards for Margot, he was doing boards for Taj, he was doing Dave's boards, he was doing, you name it, the list was ridiculous. And I was production manager, but also like the team manager out the back, so I used to have to sort them out for different things. I remember you borrowed a board off me once. It was a thruster. You took it to South Australia, and I said, I was all excited. I said, so how did it go? And you went, yeah, and just stuck it in the corner. And, I just broke down and went, yeah, well, it's got 3 fins.
That was shit.
That was on the verge of when you were. I think you'd had enough of thrusters.
Yeah.
It was like right at that time.
Yeah, it would have been, and I'll have to deeply apologise because I recently got a slap in the face by seeing myself as a 21-year-old in the electric acid surfboard test series that just happened, where there was some footage of me in an interview that Justin Gain was doing. And just I know it all. I'm 21. I know how.
Is it the start of episode 3?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Lauren. Yeah. Everyone can go look at that again. It's so hard and so embarrassing to just realise, we're all such little smart asses at that age.
I could see, for me, I thought you looked nervous and you're having to put on a brave, tough guy front. Yeah. That's what I saw. I saw the facade roll in and you had to be like the surf guy in front of the camera.
Yeah, he had to be corporate when he was so anti-corporate, but he had to be corporate. And it was hilarious. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, but I do remember also getting a board off you when it was out at the West Burleigh factory site too.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yep.
So that was a period there. And so then you moved on from doing that with Nev. What came next?
I was winning Kira Board Riders at the time, and it was like the second time I'd won it, maybe third time I'd won it. And Hanley approached me, and he was big. He was on his way. But even then, Darren was doing 50 boards a week. Nev was doing 250 boards a week. So the difference was ridiculous. He just left Murray's stable.
Pipe Dream, yep.
Just left Pipe Dream. And he said, do you want to come and work for me? And I went, sure. I'd had enough. You know, I said, yeah, I want to be a shaper. And so I came on and became a ghost shaper for him. And I had a really good time there. And the loveliest guy, the loveliest shaper I've ever met was Sam Egan, hands down. Loveliest guy. He's a really good craftsman, but he's a really good human. So a lot of respect for him.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, I remember Luke Egan, who a lot of surfers will know from his surfing fame and skill.
And coaching now?
Coaching really successfully now. I remember he had organised for his dad to reshape or kind of interpret the speed square boogie boards that Chris Del Moro and Carvani did. And so Sam made a couple because I had family living in Newcastle who wanted them.
Oh, nice.
So I thought, Sam lives down the road from my family who are there. And so I organised for that to happen so they could get a couple for my nephews and my brother-in-law. And it was the same, just such a lovely guy. And I remember at the time Luke saying something like he was at his 40,000th board or something crazy. Like just the numbers, I don't know what the number actually is, but just how much time he would have put in as a craftsman.
Him and Mitchell Ray, they're the two.
Yeah, right.
If you want to go back into Australian history and lineage, those two are the best.
Cool.
He's the nicest guy. I don't know Mitchell, but I've seen his boards.
Yeah.
And when I watch the acid test, from a shaper's eye, I'm watching it and going, man, these boys need to go to the Mitchell Ray School of Hydrodynamics, please.
Yeah.
Look at what he's done. Everything he's done is about rocker and flex.
Yeah.
The guy was 40 years ahead of everybody.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Hands down.
So you did the Darren Hanley thing for a while and you were ghost shaping. What was the next step?
Well, I was a ghost shaper there, and so was JS. So this is early days for JS. JS wasn't anybody. He was just a ghost shaper like me. And then Japanese approached him because they saw his logo on one of Darren's boards and went, well, you want this guy because he's the next thing. So they really got behind him. And then when he left, I was ready to go with him. He said, come with me. And at that time, I couldn't deal with being in that little blue room anymore doing 8 to 10 boards a day. It was just mental burnout.
Yep.
So I went, I'm going to go back to what I was doing at Navs and just become a production manager again.
Yeah.
And then the pressure was off and I was good at it and I could just deal with people and it was easy. And then I could still do the same thing, shape my boards after work and not be a shaper. You have to be on all the time. That's the downside. If you're a production ghost shaper, you got to be on. Otherwise, they're giving you grief if they're not perfect how they want them to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes me think about Julia Cameron She's an author. She wrote a book called The Artist's Way. And one of the chapters in her book, basically the book is about like leading a creative life and how we keep our creativity active in our lives no matter what we do for our careers. Yeah. And one of the chapters in her book is about being a shadow artist, which is like you're kind of doing the thing that's your creative outlet, but not quite. Yeah. So it's like for you pumping out boards that are other people's designs, being a ghost shaper. Yep. It's kind of like being a shadow artist. Yeah. You've got your hands on the foam, but it's not your creative design. And so being a production manager, you were able to have your career, bring in the money for your family, but also keep your craft developing and your creative outlet
It allows you to stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
That's what it allows you to do.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's like those backup singers, 20 feet from fame.
Yes.
They're back 20 feet from the lead singer, but they're just as good as them.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they're back there. And that was, and I know a lot of ghost shapers that are really, really good. Some of the ghost shapers I've worked with are better than the main guy, way better. But for whatever reason, well, they don't talk as well. Some of them are a bit shy and just standoffish. So they, even though they're great craftsmen, there's a lot out there.
So when did you step into the lead singer role then?
When I met the Yeti again. I got approached from these Japanese guys and I was working at the airport throwing bags. I'd left JS, I'd had enough. He wanted to put his best mate on, his neighbour. So that guy basically, I just got made defunct and got booted out of there and he's put his friend on. I went, good luck with that. And I got a job. It's funny how the karmic wheel works for you because there was another guy called Aaron Waters. Do you ever heard of him?
Yeah, I remember.
You know Aaron. Yeah. He's a lovely guy and he was doing the QS and he was a pro surfer and he had no money. And at the time I was starting to make a few boards. So I said, look, I'll make you some. And I just helped him out this whole year and a half on the tour. I just made him the boards he needed. And then he got a sponsorship with Rusty, clothes and boards. I'm like, go for it, mate, do it, you know. So then he switched over and then years later, he was the head guy at the airport. That's how Margot got his job too. Same thing. All the crew that were in the industry but for whatever reason needed a job, you'd ring up Azza and go, hey Azza. And I rang him up when I was at JS. I said, is there any chance? And he said, sure, just come and see me. And so 2 weeks later, I was throwing bags at the airport. And that's when these Japanese guys approached me and said, oh, Dave, we want him. Do you know him? I'm like, yeah, I know him. I remember his rough head from walking into Navs and where's me boards? No. And they all used to walk in just, yeah, can I get some boards? Anyway, they at the time, this is pre-Cove, right? So you'd had 5 covers in Japan, 5. And they wanted you bad. And I'm like, okay. So I approached Dave and said, would you want to try some? Can I throw some boards at you? And he just went, not kindly, went, yeah, sure. So and that's how it all started.
And so what was the point of difference with boards? Like there's so many shapers out there, so many different approaches to crafting surfboards. Yep. What was your point of difference?
That was the wonderful thing about it. He just said, shape what you want to shape. And at the time, he was riding for Dick Van and Aquila Ipa. So Aquila's were these knifey, bladey twinnies and Dick Van's were these beautiful fishes with these nice concaves. And I'm like, I'd rather do something completely different. I started making quads. Remember, they were all quads. Mm-hmm. And the India thing happened with Castles in the Sky, that last section, and he's on that quad.
Oh, it's such a beautiful, beautiful section in that film.
And everyone's tripping out because they thought he was on a twin fin, and even the other board was a quad too. So I made him a couple of quads, and I think he was ready for a change because he'd been riding those boards for so long. So I just flipped through something else under his feet.
That was such an interesting time in surf culture. Japanese culture was a real injection of funding, cultural support, and interest in a way that it's not anymore.
In the 90s and the 2000s, the money was huge. Yeah. That got pumped into it from those guys.
Yeah, so popular. And I know that was like, for me, that was a real thing. And when that opportunity came along with Gazza to do that, it was like, great, yep, I need the money. I don't want to go slinging drinks and working,
throwing bags,
other jobs, you know. And I was like, all right, I'm going to make that.
Were you like entertaining, doing bartending, whatever?
It was always there because I don't know. There's only so much of the surfing industry I can handle before feeling overwhelmed. And so it was always...
And also it's year to year with contracts.
Yeah, or maybe, exactly. Yeah. Like everything there is like pretty much, 2 years cycle,
it's
really.
You're always a little vulnerable.
Yeah, but for me, the surfboard thing has always been that I've always just been a sleeper rounder with surfboards. I don't know how else you could call it that, but it's like when you travel and you come across a shaper in Hawaii who's making boards for Hawaiian waves, you ride those boards. When you come to Australia and you want to ride the points, you ride Gazza's boards, you ride these boards here. It's the same all over the world. So I always kept that sort of dynamic open, because I just felt like I didn't need to be so structured in my surfing life to win a world title, which is largely a game of consistencies. You just need a board that you know is going to do what you want it to do
it's
every
formulaic,
time.
isn't
It's
it?
very
Predictable.
formalized. Yes, so and it's low risk. It's all about just minimizing any variables and any risk, right? So that when that wave comes through in your world title heat, you know you can go up and down and surf on it the way the judges want to see, and you'll win your world title. Just no variables. And I'm not that guy. So I've always wanted to be able to have an open relationship in that way, where it's just like, oh, cool, look how interesting this is over here that these people are doing, and look at that over there. And that was what I was doing with Dick Van Stralen and Aquila Iper primarily. But I was also traveling and riding just boards wherever they would pop up. So I felt like it was also a really great moment of just being able to get a full education in surfboards by doing it that way. Yeah. And then when Gazza and I connected, and he had such a willingness to just experiment with not only shape but material, that was huge for me, because when we first got together and we were talking about this, you started running the carbon on the rails and stringerless combinations, and I've always been a sucker for stringerless. And then we were like talking about, you know, fabrics, and then you would come up with, you know, PET, recycled plastic. Then you'd come up with this hemp combination, these like denim style hemp mixes, and then wood veneers on the deck only, so that you don't crush the deck, which is what that one is in Castles in the Sky. So there was this really great willingness with Gazza, where you were just so energetic, and like we were saying earlier, like you have a lot of energy and you're really front-footed with all this stuff. And so was Dick Van Stralen, and when I was a young kid, it was very much like that. But you know, he was getting older, and I was down the coast and not really hanging out with him like I used to. And yeah, just a moment where it felt like, your real proactive nature was just super exciting, because it was like, holy shit, we're making these boards that really are very sensitive, high functioning boards, but they're also, each one of them, an experiment in materials, what they were made out of.
Remember when the whole carbon thing came in, right? And there was patent on it, right? And there was crew out there trying to stop it, whatever. And the Japanese crew, I actually had my name's on an innovation patent for it, and they made me do it, and not to stop. And it was never to stop anyone else. It was so they couldn't stop us, and so we could just go along and do what we were doing, because it was really changing really rapidly. You know, it was
Can you talk us through the evolution of material experimentation for you with your boards?
Wow. I did one for Dave. I don't think he even got it. I did one out of bamboo. Like, it was like a stretchy T-shirt. It was bamboo cloth, and it was so bad, and it just de-lamped. I think it ended up under the house, mate. It was so bad. And the glasser goes, it was like glassing a wet T-shirt. And he's just giving it to me. I'm like, so sorry. But we had to try.
Yeah.
And you know, if you had funding these days, wouldn't it be amazing what you could produce with funding? Like, this is all self-funded, so I was just paying for it as I went. But the first one was bamboo, then we went carbon rail stringerless, then we went Polonia. I've done those stringers like Mitchell Ray does, but he did them in timber. I actually did them in carbon, and I actually hand cut the thing, cut the blank out, glassed the carbon in there, and then shaped it, and it was like, whoa, it was such work.
Can you tell me what you're doing with your hands?
Oh, sorry.
Lots of hand gestures.
Like, tell me about those stringers. Where are they running?
They're running from the nose into the tail, they were swallows, so they were running. If you watch and look at any double stringer Mitchell Ray, you'll get the idea. It's from the nose into the tail. So the board's curved. Yeah. So the board, the carbon parabolic rail follows the rail line in curve. So then when they boards twist, they twist with it, and they give you spring out of the turn. That was the whole idea of that. They work pretty good, but I think the downside with carbon in the foam is they become too stiff, and then they crease because they hit the break point early, whereas the Flax does not do that. It keeps bending. So the Flax can take a fair beating before they crease. You know, it takes a lot.
When did you first encounter Flax as a potential material?
I saw it. These guys from down this way somewhere. I can't remember their names, but good on you boys. They were playing with it, but only on a small scale. They were just doing the odd one here and there. And I looked at it and went, I'd like to try that. And the real early Flax was real heavy. Remember those ones you took to, I think, Taylor Steele movie?
Yeah.
Was it a tighter weave or something?
No, it was 8 ounce. It was heavy. And back then they were PU too. So PU with heavy, they were stiff and weird. But as soon as you put the epoxy into the mix, you can go as heavy as you want, and they still feel good. So epoxy changed the playing field, I think.
So weren't you playing, wasn't it some relation or someone you knew that was also dealing with it in boat building construction in Sydney?
Oh, yeah.
Flax?
Flax. Well, my friend Justin, he's at Riviera on the Gold Coast up at Coomera. He's proper boat builder, and he's been doing it for 30 years. And he said they put flax inside all those high-end boats. You know, those $250,000 boats. They've got flax inside them because it looks beautiful, but it's really strong. And they needed the tensile strength because of the twist of the boat. And he said it twisted better than the carbon because the carbon will crack. Well, you've had those stringless carbon boards before.
Yep.
And what happens to them when they under heavy load, they just go.
Yeah.
But when you have flax, you can put them under heavy load and they don't go, they hold. So the longevity is definitely there.
Yeah.
When did you know that it was what you were going to keep working with as a material?
When he didn't break them.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. Yep.
When he didn't break them. And he still hasn't broke one.
I saw some of the comments on the electric acid surfboard test were about how maybe you were light-footed on boards and maybe you weren't like pushing as hard as some people who really, lay it down on rail. And I was like, Dave has huge feet. He's not a small guy. He definitely pushes boards to maximum capacity, wouldn't you say?
That original one, that 5.7, that's 8 years old, that's been in 4 movies. It's 8 years old. I've seen him absolutely flog the shit out of that thing, no harder than you could out the back of, Lennox. It's like 6 foot, just go, and he hasn't broke it, he hasn't creased it, hasn't done anything to it after 8 years. So it's got to tell you something. It's like, hello, how long is this test going to go for?
Yeah, exactly.
Please stay tuned while we take a quick break to acknowledge the folks who help make our podcast possible. Let's raise a glass to something bigger than just great beer. Meet Stone and Wood, a brewery that thinks big and acts small, right from the heart of Byron Bay. Stone and Wood isn't just about brewing beer, it's about building a community. Certified B Corp and driven by environmental and social responsibility, they're all about making a positive impact one sip at a time. Their philanthropic arm, the Ingrained Foundation, supports local grassroots organizations, channeling funds and volunteer hours straight into the communities they call home, focusing on environmental and social causes close to the heart. Here's to Stone and Wood for crafting exceptional brews and for making a tangible difference in our Northern Rivers community. Patagonia is in business to save our home planet. Founded by Yvonne Chenard in 1973, Patagonia is a surf and outdoor apparel company based in Ventura, California. As a certified B Corp and a founding member of 1% for the Planet, the company is recognized internationally for its product quality and environmental activism, as well as its contributions of nearly $230 million to environmental organizations. Patagonia's unique ownership structure reflects that Earth is its only shareholder. Profits not reinvested back into the business are paid as dividends to protect the planet. Futures makes the first surf fins from recycled fishing nets. Alpha Net Plus is an innovative collaboration between Futures Fins and Borreo, blending carbon and discarded fishing nets. To date, they've transformed more than 35,000 kilos, that's about 77,000 pounds, of discarded fishing nets into new alpha fins at their headquarters in Huntington Beach, California. Nets that would have otherwise ended up in the ocean. Made for high performance and tested by the best, from our very own Dave Rastovich to friend of the podcast, John Florence, Alpha is available in a wide range of fins for those who want to make a difference with every wave you catch. Learn more at futuresfins.com. The best summer surf seasons go hand in hand with fried eyeballs. Looking perpetually red-eyed might be an indicator of good times, but it also hurts. Good sunnies are non-negotiable, but ours inevitably get jumbled in the beach bag and the lenses get shredded by sand. Child, that's CHILDE, Eco Eyewear reimagines the way we use sunglasses. Instead of tossing out frames because of scratched lenses, the Child for Life program offers free lens replacement up to 12 months from purchase and for a small fee thereafter. Child makes sunnies and prescription glasses from plants, not petrol. It's eyewear that's made to last and able to be repaired for a smaller energy footprint. Let's reimagine the culture of disposability together. Learn more at childeyewear.com. It's been so exciting for me, Gazza, to see you being acknowledged and honored for all the time and energy you've put into self-funding alternative materials. Yeah. How has it been for you to hand off this experiment that you've really pioneered to other shapers through the acid test series?
I kind of view it the same way that Patagonia gave away Ulex. I look at it that way and go, it's not about them. It's about making a better product that's going to last. So, and that's where I always knew it was a better product. And hopefully, I mean, you know, like Dave had the vision. If he hadn't had the vision, it would never have happened. None of this would have happened. It still would have been on the back burner as a gimmick. But because he had the vision to actually give these things a beating, and he's given them a fair beating, that one in Indo, my God, that thing's...
Yeah.
Sumba at 8 feet, that board's had an absolute beating, and here it is. It's still going. It's still valid. I think if you went on a boat trip to Indo tomorrow, you'd probably grab it again because it's proven.
100%.
It's a proven board, so it's a no-brainer. But I think the industry has to shift away from this throwaway mentality. They've really got to shift. It's time. I think it's time right now. For whatever reason, the universe is going, it's time. You know, you're on the right path. That trying to wake everyone else up to it has been the hard part.
So the series is out. All 4 episodes have been released through Stab Premium. You can go and watch them all at once if you want to. But one of the reasons why we wanted to sit down with you today, Gazza, is because I know lots of people have been asking questions. I've heard about a lot of backyard shapers ordering rolls of flax, and now they've got questions. How do I use it? What's it capable of? How do I work with it differently? So can we go through some of the most frequent questions you've been getting asked?
I was the same. I got so many emails and from little guys, and I'm like, yes, because that was me back in my grandfather's shed in Wollongong.
So good.
That was me. I'm like, I was stoked. And they think for some reason that you're not approachable, but I said that to Danny, tell him to ring me. I'll tell him how to do it. And I got 3 phone calls. 11 people did it, but I only got 3 phone calls. So, and even 2 of those phone calls, they still didn't do it how I told them to do it. They just did it their own way anyway.
Is that when you turned into a skeleton next to the phone?
That's correct.
Yes.
That was me.
Yeah, it's good to see you with some meat. It's good to see you with some meat on your bones again.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I got insulation, buddy.
So we had Corey Graham here. He was one of the shapers in the surfboard test, and such a lovely guy, very talented, and just a kind fella, I reckon. He just has such a real kind presence to him, and it can't be underestimated, you know, just kindness in the surfing bubble, which is so often a bit of a chest-beating macho culture in the past. But I think the kindness of sharing, and Gazza, you are probably the most helpful person I've ever met and continue to be. Your nickname, one of them is Hardcore Ground Crew, because you are literally like the most helpful guy anyone in our circles. We've done sailing adventures, long challenging trips, and you're always right there ready to help.
So generous.
Super helpful.
Stoked.
And you can see it in this, you know. And so with this, like now, you saying, you know, give me a call. I was that little guy once in my shaping bay in Wollongong trying to just figure stuff out.
Yeah.
So when people call you now and they say, hey, I want to shape this board, it's got 30 channels and it's got a twist in the blank and there's fang wings on the side and blah, blah, blah. How far can you go with what you shape and then wrapping it in flax?
You can go as far as you want. There's no limits to it. I mean, look what I do. I do a full-length Taurus channel. A lot of shapers are too scared because they don't understand what it works. You understand how it goes up into the shoulders and how that reacts, but a lot of them don't get that, so they bring it to halfway or they just make it in the tail. So they do this little half channel. Fine, that's their gig, but it's not what I do. And I had to, me and the Glasser had to retrain about how to do that. And Corey said it too, dropping it in 6 channels, it's harder, and you need a Glasser that knows what he's doing, it's got experience. But my thing with those young guys, don't walk away from it. If you're laminating, and the thing about epoxy, you got plenty of time. You don't need to rush it. It's not like PU, it'll go off in front of you. The pot will go off in front of you. Epoxy's not like that unless you really over-catalyze it. You don't need to do that. You've got all the time in the world to get this thing right. So what you need to do is take your time, get the squeegee going, get it right, wet it out really well in those channels, and stand back and watch. Because what happens is that it warms up as it's going off, but it goes off really slow. So it's slower to excavate air. And so the air is what you've got to watch out for, little bubbles. And that's what Boots from Joy Mills rang me yesterday about. It was all about, I'm getting these air. And I said, well, a lot of times if the stringers are really green, you'll get more air out of them. Or if the blanks aren't that good, they're really open celled, they're really aerated, they're full of air, you're going to get more air. So the other trick with flax, or any epoxy really, but flax especially because it's so tensile, you've got to seal them really well. If you seal them really well, you're going to have way less problems down the track. Makes a massive difference. And it's very pliable. It's more pliable than you think. It's not what everyone thinks it is. Hemp's a lot stiffer, but it's got more spring. Flax has got more bend. So that's where it's harder to break a flax board, I think, just because of that one element where it'll bend, and it takes a lot to get to a break point.
Mm-hmm.
So they're good.
It sure does. Yeah, and I'm using it now because, Gazza, once again, you've been helpful and you dropped off all kinds of flax offcuts and rolls for me to use in this boat build. And I've nearly finished hull number 1 of a 30-foot cat. And I've been using flax in all those fiddly corners because it does wrap around, it does fit actually really well. And I'm an absolute novice with glassing and with boat building, and it has been such a joy to use. You know, I've been using heavy duty 10 ounce plus cloth on the boat, fiberglass, and compared to that, the flax is just, it's like silk. So great to work with.
Yeah, it's natural, so it's even better, but the bend's good.
What about sourcing? Where is flax coming from?
The flax I use comes from Damien at Colin in Sydney. You can get it all over the world. I mean, I know the boys in Melbourne, they're getting it from somewhere else. The original stuff I got came from Switzerland, which was really hard to get. And then the better stuff came from England. So I've had to source it everywhere. But now it's made in Australia. It's so much easier.
I learnt that Russia...
Is it grown in Australia too?
I think so too, yeah. They grow it here.
I was learning that Russia is the biggest producer of flax. 70% of flax grown in the world is coming from Russia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's a versatile plant, isn't it?
Yeah, all over. Cooler climates, but all over. So yeah, like anything from probably Sydney south, you'd be growing it, no worries.
And it's fast growing. What are some of the other characteristics of flax?
I don't know, you got any?
Well, it's got all them benefits to it. But it just, out of all the stuff I've done for the last 40 years, it's still the best. Even they look quite cool, but it's the best one I've come across so far. And I know we can do better. There's something's going to come along that's going to overtake it, no doubt in my mind. But I haven't seen it yet. I'd love to see it. I'm sure you'd love to see it. You'd like to write it. But something's got to come along that's better. But right now, there's nothing better than that stuff that we're using.
So what else do people need to know if they're shaping a board in their backyard, or they've got a little production house, they're pumping out boards, but they want to start using flax? Where do you start?
If you're not sure, I'll leave my email. Just email me. I'll give you the answers. It's probably the best way because then you can get technical. And that's what Boots did from Joy Mills in Torquay. He just rang me. And that's what I said to Danny at the start of that thing with the skeleton. I said, just tell them to ring me. If they want the answers, I'll tell them. I'm not holding it all back. I'm not holding on to it. I'm letting this go. This is the universe going, hey, here you go. Take that. Run with that.
Yeah, it's so great. And moving forward, Gazza, what do you envision in the future of materials? Like if you just could dream up the best case scenario, what do you see?
I see, and it's coming because these guys are studying it now from Southern Cross Uni, and they invited me in to be part of that. And it's happening all over the world. I know Arctic have got one in America. I did one before. I did a green blank, but it was agave, and it was terrible. It doesn't matter if it can be the greenest material in the world. If it's going to collapse, then it's not, is it? It's not even close to being sustainable. Second surf in, you're putting your foot through the deck. I don't care what it's made out of. It's got to be stronger and better. So the foam's where we're at right now. So we're trying to tick the last box. Like you've ticked every box but the last box. The last box is, can I pull the glass off that, put it in my garden, and it'll rot? That's where we're going. And this is coming. And it's probably closer than you think. And Neil Purchase, he sent me an email the other day after this thing, and he goes, I'm working on these blanks, man. You want one? I'm like, oh, yeah, I want one. Send me one. Send me one to try. And some other people are sending me blanks to try too.
There's been a lot of talk about mycelium blanks, mushroom blanks, growing them, and the potential there. Have you had any? Yep,
and I've seen it. I've seen it in packaging already. It's pros and cons to it, like everything. It's like what we've been doing. It's like, okay, show me. Don't tell me about it. Show me, because it's got to be proof of concept. Until there's a blank that you can actually glass or even just seal. Doesn't matter. It doesn't. If the flex is right, they're still going to come back down to the flex, because it's like those timber boards. They're great. They're environmental. They'll rot back into the soil. They're only good to a certain level of surfer, and after that, the people aren't going to ride them. People that surf really good aren't going to ride them.
And they're typically the people who are consuming many, 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 many more surfboards. Yeah. People who are surfing in a more high performance style, who are warping boards and who are attuned to the sensitivity or the spring or the twang aging in their surfboards.
Well, that's it. And that's the other thing about, we've really got to get away from this white PU 4x4 mentality. It's even if you foam spray a board, in 5 years' time, it still looks good. But if that's a white board, it's going to look yellow and it looks like it's worth $50 at the dump shop, because people won't ride them. They don't want them because they're yellow. But if that board had colour it's worth $300-400. So you're ahead straight away if you look at it that way.
Can you talk about that? How you found flax boards really holding their value over time?
Oh, definitely. And that's the other value with flax that people don't get because they haven't had them long enough. But I can sell a board off Dave. Dave gives me one back, prime example. That board, I can sell that for between $650 and $750, $800 for a second-hand board that's 5 years old, 8 years old. Doesn't matter and we found that the spring does not change over the life of the board. So the spring's there, they're going to go good. As they age, I think we get to about year 4, they start to look like timber. So they look like this beautiful, look like the Polonia, that board. They look like the board from Castle. So they get prettier as they get older. So there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, so I want to order a new board from my local shaper and I want to request flax cloth. How much is it going to cost me?
Probably 20% more than what a normal white PU would cost you.
Yeah.
So
wow.
It's not much.
And what do you get for that investment?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so for that investment, so I sell a plain white PU for $1,000, say. If you order a flax EPS, it's $1,250. It's $250 more. But in 5 years' time, I'll probably get half back for that board. That white PU, you'd be lucky to get $100 for it. There's the difference. You've got your money back. So you're going to get at least 50% back. And it doesn't matter how long, that thing will just run and run and run until if you crease it, or you might not. Or the other beauty of that thing is you will hand that down to your children, and then they could hand that down to their children if they last that long. And I think they do, because I've seen boards at the single fin comp we were at, and they were 45 years old. The guys were ripping on them. They'd been in comps before, probably 40 years ago.
Maybe we're going to change that whole story about old boards that people get nostalgic with and stuff, where I don't think many people are aware of this, but because there's a culture of finding and scoring a good old single fin or a good old twin fin around the world, nowadays you don't just go to the tip or under someone's granny's house and find a beautiful old board. But I think what a lot of people don't realise is all of those beautiful old boards are usually the worst ones because they never got ridden to the death because they didn't go very well. So even though we're riding them, and it's funny, a lot of us will say, oh, those old single fins are so slow and crappy. And yes, you're right, they are, because they're the ones that didn't go well, because all the ones everyone were riding successfully and loving back in the day, they rode them to the death and probably broke them. And so maybe what we're doing with these boards is that in however many decades, if they're still being cycled around and people are riding them, they're actually the good ones too.
Because they've been ridden.
Maybe these 3 boards I have right now, Minnow will have when he's an adult, and he will know what it felt like to ride the boards that I was riding in perhaps my physical prime at the highest level of sensitivity. And that's a kind of cool thought, because, you're right, boards from yesteryear were made with a bit more structural integrity. They were made to last. They weren't into this throwaway kind of culture idea back then. But that is the trade-off, is that, we kind of get the clangers. We don't get the ones that were awesome from back then. So that's kind of a cool thought.
Outside of obscure collectors of surfboards, pro surfers surfing at the elite level are probably the biggest consumers of surfboards in quantity, right? Is this conversation touching the edges of their world?
I have it right here, right in front of me. Would you like to hear it?
Yes,
well,
please.
Before we launch into that, Gazza, I'll say, to directly answer your question, Lauren, yes, because the other night when the finale of that whole surfboard test happened, Darren Hanley was telling me how Steph and Liam O'Brien, I think it is, another surfer from the Goldies, so some of their top crew are just like, what's the deal? Why aren't we using this? Why am I going to Indo with boards that are all breaking? Why am I going to Hawaii with boards that are all breaking?
And
where's
why are
the
you having to
flax?
carry 10 boards around the world?
Yeah.
I'm sure that would be a serious life upgrade to not have to
And
carry
Taj
so many boards.
Burrow reached out to all these crew. Taj was like, what is this story? Because he's probably the one I've seen the most in my life, where he would get, because he was going for a world title for so long, and he was, everyone was really expecting him to win, and he more than likely would have won many if Kelly wasn't there dominating, but he was so technical, such a great surfer, and doing the biggest jumps and landing in the flats and snapping boards all the time, and he was always really experimental, so he was always trying new things with Nev and Firewire, all kinds of stuff, Weber, Morris, you name it, but he reached out to all these crew just fizzing the other day about this. So I think there is a response happening, because it is a legitimate idea. If you get a magic board and you can hang on to it, what a great outcome. And those people would just, they know that feeling because it means the world to them as the world's most sensitive, intricate surfers to have a board that's magic.
Well, it's like the first one you've got. So imagine that one board, you know every inch of that board, you know every situation on a wave where that's going to feel good. It's like an old dressing gown. You can just put it on and go, I'm at home.
Old dressing gown.
You know,
that's a great way.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
You have a relationship.
Yeah. You have a relationship with that board, a very personal relationship with that board. Hey, I've had guys pick up boards off me and they're frothing. There was a guy picked up last night, 2 Flax boards, and he goes, "Well, I don't know where the missus is sleeping tonight." And I just,
God,
I just lost it.
That's so good.
That's pretty funny.
All right. So what's in your hand there, Gazza?
Okay.
What's the stream of consciousness idea that's come?
This is my change the world thing. So Lauren will like this. This is the alternative tribe gathering. So this is who I would like to invite. And I was talking about an event where it could change a lot of things, but it's an event where instead of having the Stab East where it's one person, it should be a guy and a girl. It's a team, right? So this is my team. This. I just wrote these names down straight off my head. It could be anyone. It doesn't matter. But this is who I would like to invite. First up would be Torrin Martin, Steph Gilmore, just because there's buttery smooth. Who's not going to watch them?
Yeah.
Matt Hoy, Lisa Anderson. Let's put some rock and roll into this thing. Go Hoy. Third one, Brendan Margison, Coco Ho. Fourth one, Craig Anderson, Katie Simmers. Come on, Katie, you can do it. The next one is Ziggy Alberts and Klaj Gobel. Both goofies, both rip like you wouldn't believe. That's one team. I've got 2 teams in this. Clay Marzo, Carissa Moore. And the last one, second last one, is Dave Rastovich, Talia Redgard. And then I'd have Mick Fanning, Leanne Curran.
Awesome. So what are we doing? We're inviting them to...
Desert, Morocco, I don't care. It's got to be good waves.
Everyone together?
Yeah, everyone together. No plain white boards. Plain white PUs are barred. It has to be alternative material. I don't care what it's made out of, but it cannot be a white PU board. It has to be flax. It has to be, I don't care if it's made out of pineapple skins. It's got to be something worth, and the other thing is worth watching, but worth talking about. It changes the world. And the head judge is Derek Hine. Heats are 1 hour, 20 minutes. So you get to ride your board, what you're riding for an hour, and at the 20-minute mark, when the bell goes off, you got 20 minutes to go. Whoever you're in the heat with, you've got to change boards. So then when you all come in, you go, how was that? What's that made of? The discussion rolls on, and then the interviews go, how was that thing? What's going on with that? And then they're talking about new materials. They're throwing it out there. They're talking about the shapers that shaped those new materials and got into that. It's changed the world, man. This is how you do it, you know. Sorry.
Awesome.
I love it. And
I
think like we were saying earlier before we pressed record with this was just the atmosphere of like enthusiasm around all these different branches of the surfing tree right now. Like it's great. The World Surfing Tour has got its thing happening over in, these corners of the world, but that's just one branch of the tree, and there's so much going on alongside that doesn't have a lot of attention and doesn't have a lot of support perhaps, but is really just there to explore and have a lot of fun with. I think that's probably this series has been something refreshing for people because it's just shining a light on some of those other branches of the tree.
I think that's why you were so successful with this one, because you're not scared to laugh at yourself. And a lot of these people in that little bubble, and it is a bubble they're living in, they're too nervous, or corporate, whatever, they're too nervous to step back and laugh at themselves and take the piss. If you're Australian, you're just taking the piss. But anyway, that worldview has to change because it's refreshing when someone swears a lot and they're laughing and they're having fun, and it should be inclusive, not exclusive. I think Bobby Martin said it really well, man. This ain't no tennis tour, and we don't make tennis rackets. Sorry, but we don't. This is surfboards, mate, and they're craftsmen that are making them. This should not be mass-produced in some Asian country by some lady that's trying to feed her kids. I totally understand where it's coming from, why they do it, but this type of thing, it can be done by artisans and smaller companies, and take it back to cottage. I think it needs to be. It doesn't need to be that way because that way is not popular anyway.
So you don't have visions of becoming the next Merrick, the next JS?
I don't want to be. I'm happy doing what I do now. I surf, I go to work, I work about 4 hours a day. I go back. If the surf's good, I'll surf again. Do whatever. Play with the dog. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to waste the rest of my life chasing it. No way.
Do you feel like you're in your creative prime? Dave, you mentioned you feel like you're in your physical prime now in your mid-40s. Gazza, I wanted to ask you about your physical prime, but also about your creative prime in your, how old are you?
61.
In your 60s.
Yeah, so I think definitely that because of this episode, it shone this light, like Stab definitely shone this light on, hey, there is another way, there is an alternative. And Dave said it really well, we can do better, but no one's bothering to step up and do better. That's why I invited these people, because there's no discrimination about age here. Some of this crew are a lot older, or they had pro careers, but it's finished, but they're all probably twiddling their thumbs going, shit, I'd like to go to the desert and stand in a 10-foot barrel. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, why wouldn't you? You know, and because it's shared with girls, because there's a lot of really good girl surfers now too. So why not? You know, why not share it and have a team? And it's not serious. You just laugh at each other. But there is other things in it where you go, right, air reverse, you're going to be downscored. Really good style, you're going to be upscored. I'm sick of, they discriminate against really nice style. You can be the best surfer in the world and look like a crab. They just look horrible. I really want to see beautiful surfing and really nice styles in people, because that's what everyone wants to watch anyway.
Yeah, it's not just what you do, it's how you do it.
It's how you do it. And I think in my mind anyway, that's just my idea.
Yeah, and etiquette, that was the other one I really loved that you said. You get, what was that one?
Yeah, if you've got poor etiquette in the ocean, you're getting downscored and you're getting paid. You're getting called out when you get back in.
Which is huge, because I don't know if anyone has surfed with like Kelly or Mick and Parko and those guys, Dean and Morrison. Like that, I grew up with them all. I've had lots of surfs with them. Lovely people, but their enthusiasm levels in the lineup make it really hard to surf with them. Yeah. You can have fun and stuff, but you're probably not going to catch many waves while they're out in the water. Well, and that's probably typical of most tour surfers.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And even I think it was in one of the latest Billabong movies where Griffin Colapinto was out in the water at Periscopes in Indo just burning everyone, and Ethan Ewing was on the shoulder, lovely mellow stratty boy, just the loveliest guy, and he's like, big dick contest out there, huh? And called him out.
Yeah.
And then went back out and sort of joined him in a way in order to get some waves, because basically they were just being ruthless on all the other surfers who were there, who are probably hardworking guys who are on there and girls on their 1-2 week holiday of the year, and then out come these pros with terrible surf etiquette. So I like that one, Gazza. That'd be Margot would win because he's the nicest guy in the water in the universe.
And he'll be probably 10
I feel
foot.
like Carissa Moore would be right up there too.
Totally.
Well, that's why I picked this, because these people are lovely to watch, but I'd love to surf with them too.
Yeah.
Because they're all, for whatever reason, just nice humans. So I would run down that road.
I love it, Gazza. It's a good idea.
Yeah, it is.
All right, Derek, we'll have to get Derek in the room and throw these ideas around.
Imagine Derek, the fizzer. He'd be just like, yeah, let's do it. And I would make him head judge. Mate, downscale them, upscale them, or you could have the public judge on it. You could do anything, you know. Subscribe, and then you can put your comment up there. And because it's over. Most swells are 2-day swells, so you get a heat each day, and your heat's an hour and 20 each day. So you can just free surf in between everyone else. But if you're in the heat, you've got, it's pretty cool. That's a lot of people, but it's still, you'd have it over, it's over and done with. I remember when I was a kid, the best events, and they were the top 16. You don't need 30 people on the world tour. And people only really want to watch the top 10. So the top 16 is good, because then you can have, you know, wild cards from the local area or wherever it is, you know, include them. But 16's enough. You don't need more than that. And then you've got time, because then everyone's got time. And if you get an hour and 20 instead of 20, you get all the time in the world to get the bomb that you're waiting for.
It's interesting, the WSL has just announced that they're going to have more women on the tour now. Not quite equal with men, but do you feel like they should drop off some of the male competitors to make it equal?
Definitely. Mate, if you're good enough, you'd be in the top 10. You'd already be there. I mean, hey, do the grind. Mate, pay your time, but it's whether people are willing to watch you. Yeah. Are they? Yeah. I don't know. I can't even watch half of it anymore. It's like, I can't watch a 3-foot beach break somewhere on the other side of the world. I'd rather go and watch 15-year-olds at Snapper. They surf better and they've got better waves. And it's more entertaining. You can watch the cams and go, wow, how was that wave?
Oh, you're a frother.
Creatively, Gazza, what's lighting you up now creatively?
The change. It feels like, I feel like Dave was talking before about like some of the girls, and they've had enough of, how many years of this can you watch before it's like, it's done, you know? It's like, we need to make it exciting. We need to include everyone in it, not exclude them. So I take the elitism out of it, and everyone's happier. You notice that in the ocean. If everyone's cruising, you have a better surf. But the minute someone's paddling around, it's like they're trying to win the world title in 10 minutes. It's like, I just get out. It's like, get away from me. I can't deal with them people anymore.
How about in terms of materials?
Ooh, interesting. Well, at the moment, the hemp, I want to see what it does, because I did the hemp years ago with Dave, but they were PUs, and the hemp was heavy and it was stiff, made the board stiff. They were bulletproof, but they were stiff. Now we got EPS, and the new hemp's only 3 ounce. So it's like, ooh, this should bend a little bit more. So I need some feedback from Bigfoot over here to tell me, yeah, it went better, went worse. What did it do? And the Flax is still the number one. So with Flax, we got hemp, we got
Lots to play with.
There's plenty of stuff you can do there. Everyone's working on different stuff. So I'm waiting for someone to come out of nowhere and go, this is the shit.
Yeah.
And then we can get excited about something better than what we're doing. We're just trying to turn the corner. We're trying to drag everyone else around the corner with us.
Thanks for listening with us today. If you like what you heard, please consider sharing an episode with a friend. Our editor this season is the multi-talented, absolute legend, Ben Jake Alexander. The soundtrack was composed by Shannon Soul Carroll, with additional tunes by Dave and Ben. We have a few new Water People experiments this season. You can find every episode of the podcast on our Water People YouTube page, or subscribe to our very infrequent newsletter to get book recommendations, questions we're pondering, and behind-the-scenes glimpses into recording the podcast and more via our website, waterpeoplepodcast.com. We'll be continuing today's conversation on Instagram, where we're at Water People Podcast.